Hello, everybody. I noticed a lot on Instagram and TikTok and all this. People are really obsessed with moon jars. Obviously, it's a very, very beautiful shape. It's admired by everyone. So I thought today I would kind of give you my take on how I would approach it and make it simple and easy to make. So what I'm going to attempt to do is, I had someone ask me about making a moon jar, and I also had someone asking me about making a closed form. So I'm going to attempt to do both of those things with one piece. So let's give it a shot and we'll see what happens. So I have two 5-pound balls of clay here. I might go to 5 and 3, we'll see. Let's get this set up. So let's take this, just so I don't go too crazy, and we'll do 8 pounds. So I think this is pretty manageable for someone who's a little advanced. 8 pounds of clay, and I very rarely wedge over 5 pounds. I just think that being able to do this is much easier than trying to wedge 8 pounds of clay. And if you noticed, as I'm banging it, I'm trying to force this down over that and make sure there's no air. So I'm kind of doing two things. I'm smacking them together and trying to release any air that could be there. Okay. And I'm also just trying to make sure these are connected good. I have some excellent videos on hand position, centering, and all of that stuff. And it's funny, I did a video, and this is in real time, this isn't edited. And I said something to the effect of, look, I did this with 1 or 2 combs. And the person, somebody responded and said, yeah, it's easy to do when it's edited, but it wasn't. I mean, we're talking, and this is centered. It just takes, with the right technique, it doesn't take that long. Too many people are trying to use their strength to do stuff like this. Okay. There's a lot of different techniques for doing this, okay? I'm not saying my technique is the best one, the only one, but if you're not doing this, you should try it and see, wow, that's an easier way than how I do it. And it may be very, very useful and helpful for you. As you know, I've been doing this before I was driving a car. So I've got so much experience, and I've worked as a production potter, and I've been teaching school and doing a million things. So I've had a lot of experience on how to throw, how to be efficient, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to start, and for me, I always try to keep my bases narrower than I anticipate them to be, because as you're throwing, You're going to increase the diameter just because of the process and because of centrifugal force and all of that. So I'm just going to choke this in a little, and if you noticed, I haven't really made any pulls yet. I'm just kind of prepping and getting my clay ready. And now I'm going to start the pulling process. So I want to get some nice height from this. Incidentally, I spent probably a good 2 hours yesterday with a lot of reclaimed clay and just kind of taking clay that I pugged and also clay that I was drying on the bats and really making my own kind of homegrown clay with the consistency that I like. So I tend to throw a little firm. I prefer that over throwing softer clay because it's easier to center and stuff like that. So what I'm doing now is I'm making some nice pulls and then I'm easing off. I'm trying to get some nice height from this before I start shaping. So one of the things that I do often is I will pull and choke. I got a little thing going on there. I'm going to just take my pin tool and just take a hair off the top. I think I might have something in the clay or I might have an air bubble. I was pugging clay the other day and I found a rubber band from the clay bags in the clay. So I'm glad I found that because that certainly would have ruined somebody's project. So back down again. Most of the time I'll try to use slip. Don't use a lot of water. As long as your hands are sliding over this, that's fine. I find this choking technique works really, really good. So basically I'm just taking 3 points and I'm not coming straight this way, I'm coming on a diagonal and squeezing the clay that way. So I'm being very conscious of the thickness of my cylinder. Because I'm flaring this out and making this very round, I want to be sure there's enough clay there so that I can do that. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take some of this off and I'm going to start shaping this. And you will notice very quickly that I shape very, very differently than probably 90% of the people throwing. All my shaping is done from the inside, not the outside. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to pull my clay out. Okay, that was my first shaping pull. Notice how dry my pot is. It's not soaked, it's not saturated with water. I don't need a flamethrower to make my shape and so forth. So those are all things you want to take into consideration as you're working. So I'm going to back in, I'm going to make my next pull. Okay. So I'm getting the shape that I want. I'm recognizing it. So at this point, I'm going to take some clay off the bottom. And I guess there's two schools of thought. Some people think that you need to leave that there for support, but I feel it just gets in my way and it prevents me from pulling up good and seeing my shape or my form. So as I'm like finalizing my shape, I want to get some of that excess out of the way so I have a better visual of what my piece will look like. Okay. So now comes the really critical point in the pot that I do differently than a lot of potters. So what I'm going to do now, like at this point, most people will go in, they'll have their rib in their outside hand, and they start shaping and ribbing like that. And for me, my philosophy, my aesthetic is throwing lines are an integral part of the piece. And I personally do not like surfaces or pots that are completely smooth and you've taken away all the beautiful throwing lines. It's just my aesthetic. Whether or not you agree, it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do now is, if someone were using the outside, they would take a rib and they would like bend it like this, or they would have a rubber rib, or they would have a wooden rib. So I'm going to put my rib in the inside, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to bend this like so, and now I can start shaping from the inside. So if you think in terms of anything that grows, whether it's organic stuff, an acorn, a coconut, fruit, everything kind of grows from the inside out. It's almost like you're forcing the shape from the inside, not from the outside in. So watch what happens when you start to do things this way. So my rib is right on the bottom. And what I'm doing is my outside hand is opposite the rib, and I'm keeping throwing lines intact, but I'm also really defining my shape and my form. So see that? See how I used my rib and my fingers to kind of shape this. And this is true of any type of bulbous form. It doesn't necessarily have to be a moon jar, okay? So this allows me to really stretch this out and get the kind of shape that I'm looking for. So I'm going back in and I'm going to do another shape right from the bottom. So we are very close to the moon jar shape, and what I'm going to do after this next shaping is I'm going to work on the bottom and show you how important trimming is to getting the shape and defining your forms even more. So I'm back to the bottom again. My inside hand is doing all the work. My outside hand is just kind of opposite the rib. And then what I'm going to do here on this shoulder, I'm going to stretch this out a little bit more. Notice how it's getting a little bit more dynamic. Wow, sweet. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my trim tool and let's do this. I think this is going to be a really important visual for you. I'm going to take my calipers, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down in here and I'm going to measure the diameter of my base. So my base and the inside of that pot is that nice narrow form. So if I flip this over, this is, and let's do it on the side. Look at how much clay is there that I can take away in the trimming process and also in the throwing process. So if you make something like this and your bottom diameter is like this, right, that narrow, but you don't trim it narrow, you lose all of that beautiful form and shape that's intact. So what I'm doing is, as I'm evaluating the piece and the form, I'm looking on the inside, because the inside is going to dictate what the outside looks like. I can look at my outside form, and then when I look in here and I see that, it's like, wow, okay. So I'm getting what I want. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to take a little bit more clay off. Watch how beautiful this shape is becoming as we're taking that excess clay off the bottom. Okay? And now you have to realize, wow, this still has to get trimmed yet. So this is going to be even more dynamic. And please do not ignore the beauty of this stuff. Like a covered jar with this for the top could be like just gorgeous, magnificent. So this is beautiful clay. It's not scraps that you just throw in your scrap bucket. Force yourself to see things differently and make things differently. So watch what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take my rib. My outside hand is going to do nothing. And I'm just going to like live on the edge. I love living on the edge. I might shape this so bingo, it collapses, but who cares? It's a lump of clay and you make another one, okay? So I just want to like put a little bit more volume in there, okay? It's like I'm blowing up a balloon and like it's like starting to get hard, but I want to blow it up a little bit more so it's almost going to burst, okay? So I'm going to go back in right down to the bottom, and I'm just going to take my rib, and it'll be subtle, but I think you'll be able to see all in here how I'm really like shaping that even more. And you can go from the top to the bottom. No one says you only go from the bottom to the top. Okay? Wow. So imagine now, when I trim this, the bottom is going to be like maybe that big in diameter. So you're going to have And one of the good design ideas and principles are, if you want a form to look dynamic, the base should always be narrower than the top, okay? So that kind of gives it this sense of moving and growing, okay? So I'm going to take my chamois, and I'm going to work on the lip a little bit. And I'm going to turn this into a closed form. So I want to be sure I have a little bit of clay left to see if I can close this up. Okay? So aside from the top, which we're going to play with now, this form or this shape is very, very close to like a moon jar shape. And this is from 8 pounds of clay. And a lot of people make big moon jars, and they make them in 2 sections, which is fine. But it's such a classical shape, and once I do some trimming, it's going to be fantastic. So for those of you who are really interested in making this moon jar shape, try doing it from the inside as opposed to the outside. So what I'm going to do here, again, just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to go in with my rib, I'm going to shape a little bit more, and then we're going to make a closed form with this. So I'm going back down, and I'll tell you what, having like really nice clay is so important to really stretching out your shapes and forms.
Dennis, when you finish the moon jar, can you say like, oh, and this is how you make the moon jar? And
Yep.
then go from the closing form?
Okay, all
You
right.
can have an outro and an intro.
Yep.
We'll continue.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this moon jar. This pretty much is how I personally would make a vase reminiscent of a moon jar, which is this round bulbous form.